Good morning, friends. Let's sing a morning song together. We're going to sing out of the Teal hymn book, hymn number 1028, Jason Shelton's wonderful, The Fire of Commitment. And I would invite you to rise in body and or spirit. Let's sing together. The lyrics will also be posted. And for those of you that are joining this morning online, you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us today. You are welcome here just as you are, whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express your identity, and in all the ways that you are becoming the person you will be. My name is Des McGarren. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a member of the worship arts team. Leading worship with me today is our minister, Reverend Mary Gear, and Troy Fisher, our music director. Here's a few things you should know about our service today. We are streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and this service is being recorded. And no matter if you are participating virtually or you are here in the sanctuary, we have subtitles on the screen, which can sometimes be creative how they appear. Up front here, we have fluffy chairs and activities for your hands so everyone can be comfortable. We are a multi-generational community, and we welcome the company of our youth, kids, babies, teens, right here in the sanctuary. There is also nursery care and a storytime program for children in the classroom wing. We are grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Mary. For those online, we invite you to go into a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat. For those in person, feel free to stay for coffee and fellowship in the Commons. At 11:30, after the coffee chat, you're invited to return to the main Zoom room or sanctuary for training on how to get things done at OUUC. If you've ever wondered how to get announcements made, or request things be included in the budget, or how to recruit volunteers, this forum is for you. Book sales news. Share the word to all our friends that our Books, Brownies and Beans sale is coming up this Saturday, October 28th. If you haven't volunteered for the fun and important community fundraiser, look for the BBB volunteer coordinators in the Commons after worship to find a job that's just right for you. Trunk or Treat returns to OUUC next Sunday, October 29th, with pumpkin carving from 2 to 3 and trick-or-treating from 3 to 4:30. This is a fun event for us, our kids, and the community at large. And to make it successful, we need you to come park your vehicle, decorate it, and hand out candy. Start planning your costume now. Prizes will be awarded. There are many things happening at OUUC. Check out the Tuesday electronic update or the website for the most up-to-date information. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. If you are online and have a chalice or candle, please join me as we light them together with the words of Reverend Erica Hewitt. We light this chalice, symbol of all that we are, all that we have done together, and all that we will be, as our shared ministry encourages those within and beyond our walls.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Reverend Mary, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a 62-year-old white woman with curly brown hair with silver sparkles. I'm wearing a black dress, a chalice necklace, glasses, and I have on a dark blue beaded stole that was gifted to me by this congregation when you installed me last year. Our opening words today are adapted by those offered by Reverend Nathan C. Walker. When you come to me, come not with the expectation to have some passive clergy person coddle you into complacency. No. Come to me as your PST, your personal spiritual trainer. I'm serious. I want to see you move. I want to see you root yourself in a community built on moral complexity and to hold one another to an ethic of intellectual honesty. I want to see you exercise spiritual practices to the point of training your mind and body and spirit to collaborate as a single, integrated, dynamic entity. I want to hear you articulate your beliefs. I want to know you are engaged in the moral issues of our time. I want to know what makes you afraid. I want to know if you are cultivating your doubts and your questions so that when you do take a stand, we can all trust your authenticity. I want to know the intricacies of how you are treating other people. I want to know if you have learned to like yourself. Have you learned to love yourself? I want to know if you feel alive. I want to know if you feel like you belong, like you feel like you matter. Because to me, You do. You do. Because you are my personal spiritual trainers. Come, let us worship together.
Yeah, wow, it's good. Let's sing an opening song together, hymn number 348, Guide My Feet. We all run in different ways and run the race at different speeds. But let's sing it together. It's a zipper song, and the nice thing about spirituals that are zipper songs, they're easy. And so it's lots of room to make some harmony, make some sound. And I'm looking for, I had someone volunteer to drum. That's okay, you can, yeah. Did you bring your drum? Drum away. It's welcome. So let's sing. I invite you to stand and let's sing together. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. Hold my hand while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. Stand by me while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. Search my heart while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain. Thank you. Please be seated.
Our story today is actually a video. On June 4, 2022, OUUC celebrated its 70th anniversary, and we installed Reverend Mary as our settle minister. Joyous celebration, for sure. It was a privilege to be a part of the team of people who created this recording. Thanks to Lee Doyle, Riley McLaughlin, Tim Ransom, Emily Ray, Martha Guilfoyle, Dio Lewis, John Tafagian, and the many people who helped us create this celebration of OUUC's 70 years.
Hey, it's our 70th anniversary.
Wait, what? It depends on how you want to count. You could say it's our 150th anniversary.
Come again? How's that?
Well, the Unitarians first came to Olympia back in 1872. They even had their own church building and everything.
But after 21 years of serving the community, didn't
Hey, it's our 70th anniversary.
Wait, what? It depends on how you want to count. You could say it's our 150th anniversary.
come again? How's that?
Well, the Unitarians first came to Olympia back in 1872. They even had their own church building and everything.
But after 21 years of serving the community, didn't after the financial panic of 1893, they had to sell the building.
And then it took another 70 years for Hey, it's our 70th anniversary.
Wait, what? It depends on how you want to count. You could say it's our 150th anniversary.
Come again? How's that?
Well, the Unitarians first came to Olympia back in 1872. They even had their own church building and everything.
But after 21 years of serving the community, didn't the church close after the financial panic of 1893? They had to sell the building.
And then it took another 70 years for Unitarianism to spring back to life in Olympia.
Yes, and spring it did, in 1952. That's when a small group of like-minded people gathered together and decided to start a fellowship. You know, a lay-led group without a minister.
Yeah, and they called it the Unitarian Fellowship of Olympia, the UFO.
I heard that the UFO first met in people's homes. Then, when more people joined in, they started renting places.
Yeah, I know that one of the places we used was the Olympia Women's Club down on Washington Street.
They say we kept growing, and eventually we needed our own building.
Yep. And I think the congregation developed an edifice complex.
So we bought that little white church at 2nd and B Streets in Tumwater in 1968.
It was built in 1872, the same year that our earlier Unitarian congregation was formed, and it's still there.
Oh, and don't forget, in 1961, the Unitarians and the Universalists merged and created the UU Association, the UUA.
Yeah, but we kept the UFO as our name for another 30 years or so. Stubborn, I guess, but we were still a fellowship.
In the 1960s and the 1970s, we really got active in social justice work. We offered draft counseling during the Vietnam War, you know.
I heard we got involved in Native American rights, mental health services, and a bunch of other local issues too. What a time!
And about then, we started experimenting with a part-time minister in the pulpit.
I think Bill Arnsmeyer was the first minister. Who knew?
Yeah, sounds like a lot of debate went on back then about how churchy we wanted to be. But eventually, we also hired someone to play music some Sundays. Big step. Wowza!
In the 1980s, we realized that if we were going to continue to transform our values into action, we needed serious money. We began to talk about pledging.
Oh boy, I bet that stirred up a hornet's nest.
It did for a while, but once the decision was made, things really got rolling in the 1990s.
I think it was about 1990 that the Reverend Sandra Lee was first made our first full-time minister.
And you're not going to believe this, but Darlene Sarkala started as our church administrator in 1991. She's been holding this ship together for 31 years.
And then, even though he'll tell you it was only 7 years ago, Troy Fisher, our fantastic choir director, signed on in 1996.
What amazing luck we've had.
Meanwhile, we started a number of traditions that lasted a long time. A women's retreat, family camp at Camp Seymour, mushroom hunts, a strawberry festival.
And then, after another serious spasm of edifice envy, we built and moved to our present home in Northwest Olympia in 1993.
Yeah, and we changed our name too. We became a congregation. What a year that was. New building, new name.
Yeah, but OUUC, it's not nearly as cool as UFO. But I guess we're stuck with it.
It's like we were coming of age or something.
We installed a sound system for the hearing impaired.
Launched a website.
Computerized our bookkeeping.
Serious stuff.
Serious, yes. About this time, we achieved recognition from the UUA as a welcoming congregation for the LGBTQ community. That's one that welcomes everyone, no matter who they love.
Then, in 2002, we called Reverend Arthur Vaney to be our settled minister. Arthur's arrival started another growth spurt.
Yeah. Then we had 2 buildings, the church and the annex next door. A minister, a church administrator, a part-time religious education person, a music director, a custodian.
You know, in 2007, when Olympia was beginning to experience a crisis of homelessness, the OUUC congregation voted unanimously to offer some of our land to the unhoused as a place to camp.
That was the beginning of Camp Quixote and our struggles with city rules and insurance standards to make it legal to do the right thing. Boy, I hear that was quite a time.
Eventually, 5 local faith communities took turns hosting the camp for 3-month periods. What a lot of work that was for everybody.
My goodness, yes. And you know, right from the beginning, the first residents of Camp Quixote had a vision of building something more permanent. And
so, in 2013, after huge amounts of work by folks from OUUC and the larger community, Quixote Village was built on the west side of Olympia.
I heard the village opened on Christmas Eve. 30 tiny houses providing permanent supportive housing for our houseless neighbors. What a gift.
Really. But then all that activism drew more people through our doors. We needed more room.
yeah, remember? You could hardly hear yourself think in the foyer during coffee time. And our DRE's office was in the closet in the kitchen.
So, in 2010, we started building again. We added a wing for religious education and the commons, and we made the administrative area and the kitchen bigger.
I bet it was fun when everyone got to paint their handprints on the insides of the walls in the RE wing. They're probably still there.
We could go on and on. So much has happened at OUUC. Oh, don't forget the support of our partner church in Transylvania and all our trips to visit. The choir, a group of our youth, lots of us.
Yeah, well, we better wrap this up. But there was all that work, trying to figure out who we are and what we want to be after Arthur retired.
And the transitional ministers who helped us do that.
And our first unsuccessful attempt to find our next settled minister.
And we found that other justice causes needed our attention.
Marriage equality, climate change, racism, and white supremacy. So many issues are calling us.
Now we are installing our second settled minister, Reverend Mary Geer. How great.
We sure have come a long way from that small lay-led fellowship that began it all in 1952, I tell you.
Or even longer, from that first Unitarian church in Olympia in 1872.
Happy 70th anniversary, OUUC.
Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practices of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. We each have the power to share, and when we combine our gifts to create an offering together, we are able to do more than any of us can do alone. We also express our gratitude for the gifts that life has given us, for the network of relationships in which we live, and for the presence of the community. If you are new or visiting us for the first or second time, you are our welcome guest with no expectation to contribute. Excuse me. However, if you are moved, what you share will be most gratefully received. The offering collected here does 2 things. It supports the ongoing work of our congregation, which is also supported by our regular pledges. This also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for September and October is Black Power Pathways, a mutual aid fund. The Black Power Initiative's mission is to empower and create financial access for Black people to have the power to determine the destiny of our Black community. With this ultimate vision, one simple but significant first step is to provide emergency financial support in the form of small cash grants to Black people in need to keep from slipping through the cracks. Formerly known as a Pathway to Hope, Black Power Pathways' mission is also to help formerly incarcerated people find paths to community support, housing, and economic stability. You can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or by texting the number that will appear on your screen. You can also mail a check to Olympia UU or place your offering in one of the baskets being passed by the ushers. Passing the offering basket is never just a practical exercise. It has always been a ritual reminder of that form of love we call generosity. May we be generous with our love.
Thank you for your generous gifts and all the ways that you give them. We came together this morning bringing all that is in our lives. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drumbeat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of our community. So right now, let's just take a deep breath together. In and out. And let's open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and in our community and world today. We deeply grieve the continuing loss of life in the Israel-Hamas war. Again this week, we place 2 stones in the water. One for the people of Israel, and one for the Palestinian people, as we continue to raise our voices in prayers for peace. We send our love and care to Janet Spencer and her family. On Friday, we celebrated the life of Janet's partner, Chuck Ricketts. We celebrated their love and the life that Chuck relished. May his spirit be at peace. And Janet, know that we celebrate and grieve Chuck with you today. And last, in October of 1952, the Unitarian Fellowship of Olympia, UFO, was recognized by the American Unitarian Association as a congregation and fellowship. Happy 71st birthday, OUUC. For those online, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen. And for those in person today, I invite you to come forward if there is something you'd like to bring into this community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Please come up by the side aisle and return by the center aisle. So let's listen to the heartbeat of our community as we reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share today. We'll place a stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. And one more stone placed in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken this day. Please be in whatever way is comfortable for you for prayer and meditation. Infinite web of life, Spirit of love, help us remember that we are not alone in our times of grief, sorrow, and despair. May we be comforted by the Spirit of life and by the work of human hands. Help us remember that we are not alone in our joy and wonder, for they are present too. May we share the beauty that we find in this world. Open our hearts to all that is in our lives. Open our minds to what is possible. Open our hands to share in the work ahead. So may it be. Blessed be. Amen. Let's hold a moment of silence together.
Thank you. Today's first reading is an excerpt adapted from Size Transitions in Unitarian Universalist Congregations, published by the Unitarian Universalist Association in 2005. If all congregations kept the same members, stayed the same size, retained the same minister and staff members, and always had the same well-known set of issues, religious life would be easy. It would also be fabulously boring. It is exciting to welcome new guests, hear new sermons, and puzzle over new challenges, but it is not easy. Getting used to change is the hardest change of all. Somehow, we imagine that it is possible to live without change. Yet, to live is to grow. To grow is to change. Therefore, to live is to change. And any thought that we can avoid change in life is pure illusion. We, Unitarian Universalists, must recognize our need to overcome our resistance to changes in congregational life and any attitudes we hold that neglect those who seek our saving faith.
I invite you to recall the year that you first came to OUUC, or maybe UFO. For some of you, that was 40 years ago or more. And for some of you, today is your very first time here. And for some of you, you were here, and then you stepped away, and then you came back, and maybe you stepped away again, and then you came back. And so there are some different years that you might bring to mind. But just bring to mind a year that you first came to OUUC. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand based on when you first arrived. The folks online, too, if you're willing, turn on your camera, or you can raise your digital hand if you prefer. And you can see each other on Zoom if you put your screen on gallery view, and we can see you on the sanctuary screen. So with your year of arrival in mind, raise your hand if you came to OUUC before 1993. So you were in the Little White Church in Tumwater. You experienced lay-led services and first ministers, and most things were done by congregants. So thanks for putting your hands down digitally. Got some folks online too. So now raise your hand if you came to OUUC between 1993 and 2001. 1993 to 2001. You came to the new building during a time of debate and dissension and ministerial transition. And put those hands down. Now raise your hand if you came to OUUC between 2001 and 2014. It was a time of a lot of growth. So you came during a time with focus on services to those without homes. You experienced the addition to the building and lots of numerical growth. And we can put those hands down. And now raise your hand if you came to OUUC between 2014 and 2019. So you came during a time of several ministers, much transition, including a big change in how we do things, or what's called governance. And then with those hands down, raise your hand if you've come to OUUC since 2019. Yeah. So you came in the time of COVID. Woohoo! And a settled ministry that has been anything but very settled. So then with those hands down, did you look around? There are people here who came to OUC over decades. Decades. And as you saw in the 70th anniversary video, this congregation has changed a lot over the years in many ways. Now, it's said among ministers that people tend to think that the congregation is the same as it was when they arrived. Even though we know that things change, and even though we know that in our heads, in our hearts, we still think that the congregation is just like it was when we got here. And I think that's kind of like the experience we have as we age, when we look at ourselves in the mirror and we wonder who that person with the laugh lines and the silver hair is, because in our heads we're still 25. Now, there are theories about how congregations grow and change, and today I'd like to share a model with you for church size transitions. This wisdom has been gathered by those who study congregations, and it's that there are 4 sizes of congregations based on Sunday service attendance, not membership, Sunday service attendance. So if we could have the first slide. The first size is family size, and that's attendance up to about 50 people. It's like a family. Everybody knows everybody. And these fellowships or congregations are often lay-led. If there's a minister, it's part-time. And if there is any other staff, it might maybe be an administrator part-time. The UFO in the little church in Tumwater was a family-sized congregation. Then the next size is from 51 to 150 people attending Sunday services. It's not too big that you can't know people, but it's big enough to have most likely a full-time minister, at least eventually. It's kind of like a gang with a hub in the center, that is the minister. And often at this size, the congregation will add staff, even if it's part-time, a music person, and maybe a religious educator. This transition from family to pastoral began with the Unitarian Fellowship of Olympia and continued with OUUC. This congregation was pastoral size from about 1983 until the early 2000s. Then the next size up is program size, and this is Sunday service attendance from 151 to 350. And rather than being like a family, a program-sized church is kind of like a neighborhood. There are many entry points, like there are many houses in a neighborhood, and the ministry is shared between professional staff and congregants, lay people. It's large enough to have a minister, full-time minister, and more staff. And often, as a congregation grows, there's a need for 2 ministers, but a program-sized congregation can't always afford that. OUUC began the transition to a program size numerically, certainly by 2004, and has been making that transition ever since. The program size in numbers is where we are right now. The 4th congregation size is corporate, which is more than 350 people attending Sunday services. And whether this congregation wants to be that big is an open question. Some people want to grow the church, and some don't. There are advantages and disadvantages to growth, and it is not inevitable. Whether this congregation wants to grow and why is a discussion for another day. So this is a graphic representation of how congregations change and grow. So this table has two dimensions. One of the dimensions is what's at the center. Is the pastor or the minister at the center, or is the congregation or groups at the center? And then the other dimension is how big, how many cells, or how complex the organization is. Is it a single cell, like with family size and pastoral size, or is it multi-cell, like program and corporate? Is it a simple one-cell organism, or is it complex? So the family to pastoral transition means going from a congregation centered on the pastor, the family to pastoral means going from congregational centered to pastor centered. And OUUC made that shift in the 80s. The pastoral to the program transition is the hardest because you can see as you go from the upper corner down, you have to change in both dimensions. You have to change from being pastor-centered back to being congregation-centered, and you have to change from being simple organization to a more complex organization. So it can take a really long time to make the transition from pastoral to program, because the transition is not just in numbers, the transition is cultural, and it's organizational, and it's spiritual. It requires intention by all of the leadership of a congregation, both the professional leadership and the lay leadership. And some congregations never seem to grow past pastoral size because their organizational structure and their culture doesn't really welcome growth. Their behavior doesn't welcome growth, even if their words say so. And even if numbers might increase over time, they can't sustain the growth. And then some congregations decide to intentionally stay pastoral size because that's where they like to be, and they create satellite communities and other churches and fellowships in order to meet the growing need for our life-saving faith. OUUC has been dancing with the pastoral to program transition for almost 20 years. We are too large to be a pastoral-sized church, and we haven't quite made the organizational and cultural shift to be a program-sized church. We're kind of in an awkward stage, like adolescence. We are still coming of age. So on this slide, there's some statements about what the cultural and spiritual shift looks like. In a pastoral-sized church, people say, I should be in on most decisions. In a program, it's I must trust others to make decisions. In a pastoral-sized church, at the annual meeting, we dissect everything. And in a program-sized church, it's let's not micromanage. On the next slide, about staff, why isn't our current staff meeting our need in a pastoral-sized church to, we can't do this without more staff? And finally, the biggest question that is a shift, am I being served? Changes into, is the world being served? So the cultural shift is really from thinking about an individual to thinking about the collective, from individual needs to the collective need, from everyone involved in everything to many activities with multiple entry points so that everyone is welcome and finds their own group. The challenge of a program-sized church is to have a sense of connection that doesn't always go through the minister, even when you don't know everyone and you can't attend everything. And often that connection happens in worship, which is why meaningful, excellent worship is so important in a program-sized church. The best description I've heard of in the pastoral to program transition is it goes from we are one to we are whole. We are one, we are whole. Congregational size transitions not only affect the people who attend, but it also affects the role of the minister. So pastoral congregation ministers are community-oriented. Program congregation ministers are organizationally oriented. There's empathy and compassion, and that transitions to being institutionally, organizationally wise. There's a focus in a pastoral-sized church on listening, relating, counseling, teaching, administering, and in a program-sized church on facilitating, training, organizing, inspiring, and offering excellent worship. In a pastoral-sized church, the role of the minister is to comfort. In a program-sized church, the role of the minister is to challenge. Pastoral ministers burn out because they try to meet everyone's pastoral and friendship needs, and program-sized ministers burn out because they try to meet everyone's needs rather than focusing. And the minister's focus also shifts from pastoral to program, from individuals to the collective. You can take the slide down now. So it's not that the minister in a program-sized church isn't compassionate or empathetic and doesn't listen or counsel or teach. It's just that the minister in a program-sized church counts on lay leaders to help with those things because they can't do it all. Their focus is on building capacity in the organization. And a good example of this here at OUUC is the pastoral care team. They keep tabs on people who are experiencing health problems and transitions and let me know when there is something that really needs my attention. That is shared ministry.
Our second reading is an excerpt from Serving with Grace, Lay Leadership as a Spiritual Practice by Reverend Eric Walker Wickstrom. Our congregations are voluntary associations and depend on donations, not just of our financial resources, but of our time and talents as well. In fact, even if our members pledge sufficient support that every single task could be farmed out to paid employees, the church would still need volunteers because that's the nature of a volunteer association. As Reverend Gary Kowalski put it in a sermon, people who come to Unitarian Universalism seeking spiritual goods are likely to be disappointed as long as they have the outlook of consumers in search of material goods. If their connection to our liberal faith is to grow into something more rewarding, they have to give up the consumer mindset and begin to think of themselves instead as shareholders, investors, co-owners of what happens in the church. Service within the context of your church means working with a group of people who understand your Unitarian Universalist values and commitments and will hold you accountable to them.
When I arrived here in August of 2019, I found a congregation that was weary of change with exhausted lay leaders. I heard stories of conflict and uncertainty, of pain and a longing for stability. And when I arrived, I heard, "We are so glad you're here. We've been waiting for you." It was a warm welcome. And then you handed me, well, what felt like almost everything. Here's our stewardship drive and our fundraising. Here's our size transition. Here's some long-standing conflicts that we haven't addressed. Here's our governance change. Here's our need for volunteers. Here's an organizational structure that is understaffed with a staff vacancy. We're tired. Can you take it from here? And I have to confess, it hooked me because I liked to be needed and I like to help. I have been trained since childhood to be very responsible and very capable. And I really wanted to meet your expectations. You had already experienced a ministry that didn't last. And so I tried really hard to do it all. I took what you handed me. I still feel the pull that I felt then to be both a program and a pastoral minister as we dance around the size transition, not solidly in either one. And then, not too long after I arrived, COVID hit. And that required that we all learn and do more and different things, including me and the staff. Technology is a wonderful tool that allows connection and growth in ways we haven't known, and it's an additional ministry that didn't exist here before. The pastoral to program size transition combined with the after effects of COVID means that the skills and focus of the congregation and your minister and staff are in flux, and sometimes that's really confusing. In his book, Metamorphosis, Frank Dupree tells the story of a boy who saw a butterfly struggling to emerge from a chrysalis. But the butterfly's body was too big to fit through the opening in the cocoon. And the boy really wanted to help the butterfly. It was hard to watch it struggle, and the boy was afraid it would not be able to emerge. So the boy decided to help the butterfly by using a knife to enlarge the opening in the chrysalis so that the butterfly could come out. And the butterfly did emerge, but it couldn't fly. Its wings weren't strong enough. For butterflies to have wings strong enough to fly, they need the struggle of emergence to strengthen their wings. And this is one of those times when it's clear to see the intent versus the impact. The boy intended to help, and what he did was hinder. Trying to do everything to please everyone is called overfunctioning. And one of the dynamics of overfunctioning is that we get a lot done. And another dynamic is that when one part of a system overfunctions, another part underfunctions. And those of you who have been around this congregation for a while will recognize this dynamic because it exists in this congregation. Over time, there's often been a small group of people who do most things, who overfunction, and a larger group who don't do as much. Now, this is a common dynamic in congregations, and it's also common in ministers. And it's not surprising that this overfunctioning congregation called an overfunctioning minister. We find each other. And one of the things that connects us is that we excel at getting stuff done. We share a value of doing. And we also share the shadow side of overfunctioning. Sometimes our doing takes away the opportunity for growth in ourselves and in others. Deep down, we know that overfunctioning isn't sustainable, and in the end, it really doesn't serve anybody. And so today, I want to apologize to you. I'm sorry that I thought that I could help you by doing everything. I lost my sense of humility and of my humanity, and I forgot the lesson that I have learned before. Sometimes helping isn't helpful. I'm sorry that I took away your opportunity for growth, and I will do better. That is my spiritual work. You can't do that for me. I wouldn't ask you to and wouldn't want you to. What you provide is the opportunity for me to learn the lessons of ministry and of living. You are my personal spiritual trainers. Emerging from COVID, we are beginning to discover again and define who we are as a community and who we want to be in the future. This is a time of great possibility. As we go forward, we need to redefine what is the work of the congregation and what is the work of the minister. It can't all belong to the minister and the staff. That's not how any congregation works at any size. It's never been the case, no matter what the governance model is. The ministry of a congregation is not the minister or the staff or the building or even the congregation. The ministry of a congregation is the work that we create and we do together. It's shared ministry. So what you can do is your part, your spiritual work, as individuals and as a congregation. As individuals, it's building and maintaining relationships even when it's hard and there is conflict. We call that being in covenantal relationship. It's clarifying your values and figuring out how to live those values in the world. We call that putting our faith into action. And it's letting go of what has been, celebrating what we have loved, and dreaming of what is possible. That's called mourning and visioning. It means showing up for worship and congregational meetings, for celebrations of life and small groups where we explore spirituality, for rallies and protests and marches. And it means sharing your gifts in service to our vision of a world that is loving, just, and healthy. As a congregation, your spiritual work is to define who this community is and how you want to be in the world. The congregation decides the justice ministries, how we share power and authority, and how we support and maintain the structures we build, the organization as well as the building. The congregation decides, whether consciously or not, whether to grow, and if you are willing to make the needed changes, the cultural shifts to support growth. There have been and will continue to be conversations to talk about these big questions. The board held one just last Sunday. As your minister, I can offer invitations to spiritual growth, bearing witness to this congregation's struggle to emerge. I can and will accompany you on the journey. I can help create sacred space for growth and transformation. I cannot make the struggle go away, and I can't do it for you. Your spiritual growth is yours as an individual and as a community. I promise to continue my spiritual growth even when it's hard to see you struggle, and I want to jump right in, because I am committed not only to my spiritual growth, I'm committed to yours. I made that commitment to you when I accepted your call in 2019 and again when you installed me in 2022. And just like you, I reaffirm that commitment every time I show up. And I hold that commitment even when I'm not here. In 1841, Unitarian minister Theodore Parker delivered a sermon titled A Discourse on the Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. And in his sermon, Parker said that there are many things that we see as permanent, such as the words and traditions of Christianity at the time. Well, those things are transient, and they change as times change. Words, even the words of the Bible, the words of hymns and rituals, how we do worship, all of those things change. But what's permanent is the essence of the teachings and humanity's search for truth, meaning, and connection. Those were radical ideas at the time. And they were pushed against by Orthodox Unitarians. There is such a thing as Orthodox Unitarians. Parker's question is always a relevant one. In our tradition, what is transient? What changes and what is permanent? So many things change. The people, the congregation, the minister, the governance model, the ministries, the worship, even the building. So what is permanent? I agree with Parker that it's the human desire to seek truth and meaning and connection. And creating a religious community, a congregation, is one way that we do that. We come together to accompany and support each other in our search. And when we do, no matter how the congregation and ministers and buildings change, what remains is our shared ministry, shared among the people, all of the people. It takes all of us to be a thriving congregation and to bring our life-saving faith into this world. So last Sunday, our speaker, Reverend Monica Jacobson-Tennyson, said that congregations can be described in many ways: as a refuge from the storms of the world, as a base camp to get refueled, as a team working toward a shared goal. The metaphor that works for me is to describe a congregation as a choir. Everyone adds their voice, and there are a variety of tones and ranges. Some choirs are large, and some are small. Sometimes there's a director, and sometimes there isn't. There might be section leaders, and sometimes the choir members sing the same note, and sometimes they harmonize, and sometimes there's dissonance, and the notes clash. Sometimes some voices rest and are quiet, and none of the voices can be too loud or overpower the others. The choir members change, the directors change, the songs change, but what endures is the desire to sing together, to make music, and to create beauty. And so this is the invitation that we offer every Sunday when we gather. This is the invitation that we offer each other. Let's sing together, shall we? This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. If you are online and have a chalice or a candle, please join me as we extinguish our chalice with the words of the Reverend Gordon B. McKeeman. Ministry is all that we do together. We who minister speak and live the best we know with full knowledge that it is never quite enough. And yet we are reassured by lostness found, fragments reunited, wounds healed, and joy shared. Ministry is all we do together. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love.